Welcome to Curious Goldfish, a podcast community where music and curiosity come together through interesting conversations with the music makers of our world. I'm your host, Jason English. You can find Curious Goldfish in all the major podcast and social media platforms, and of course, we have all of our content on our website, curiousgoldfish.com.
Welcome into the mind of Mr. John Bernard O'Neill III. Okay. We will do this for anybody who's spent Tuesday evenings in Mimi's on Greenville Avenue. This is so many years ago. Picture this deep dust and wild grass, scorched now by the sun of July. The strong song current of the Little Bighorn River running slow. It winding quietly through the valley.
Jack O'Neill, the first half of the acoustic rock band Jackopierce, alongside music partner Cary Pierce, has always been the mysterious, darker of the duo, who I've listened to for more than 30 years. Cary Pierce always seemed to be the front man, often more expressive in his demeanor and body language as the two crisscrossed the country for the better part of 4 decades. That clip that just played is from a song called Mexican Tune, from the album Live from the Americas. Jack is the one narrating a story about General George Custer at Little Bighorn, completely off the cuff and in real time. A terrific example of improvisational creativity that became a staple of their live shows over the course of Jackopierce's early years. In this episode, Jack and I talk about a bunch of topics, many of which I've wanted to ask him for so long. So yes, I ask him about the origins of Mexican Tune, along with some other tidbits about his 35-year partnership with Cary, including whether they share a friendship and relationship similar to Ted Lasso and Coach Beard, from the TV show Ted Lasso. It's part of the conversation that I think the most fanatical Jackopierce fans will surely enjoy. But this episode is mostly about Jack and why he's deciding to put together a full solo album in the near future called North Star. He's already started to release some songs that will be included, and we dig into a few of those in interesting detail. Jack has had an incredibly unique life and career, and the songs he's penned reflect many different aspects of being the son of a military man and being a musician and part-time actor who landed in New York City once upon a time. The songs also reflect struggle and triumph over alcoholism and questions that many artists ask themselves about whether the struggle and hardship is all worth it. Good news for us, Jack has concluded it is worth it, and he's focused on what he's destined to be, which is an artist and a songwriter. But if you follow Jackopierce for as long as I have, you knew that was always the case. Jack penned one of my favorite songs when he and Cary were studying at SMU in the late 1980s. It's called My Time, and it has the sentiment and wisdom of a man 3 times the age of a college student, and it's helped me get through some of my most difficult periods in life. 3 years ago, in the midst of a divorce following a 25-year marriage to the person who actually introduced me to Jackopierce, I found myself on Interstate 70 in the middle of Kansas, headed east to Atlanta from Boulder, Colorado, contemplating the next chapter of my life. And during that drive, which was mixed with gratefulness, anger, frustration, and sadness, I started to ponder the future, not knowing what life would be like with kids out of the house and a long relationship in the rearview mirror. Jack reminded me in that song that, quote, dreams come clean over miles of road, and that my future would start to clarify itself with every passing billboard and rest stop. I'm grateful to speak with Jack on this episode, and I'm especially grateful that he sings My Time nearly 4 decades after he wrote it. With his relationship with Cary as strong as ever, and a new outlook on life that's not clouded by the damaging effects of drinking, you can say that today, in 2024, it is Jack's time. From New York City, here's Jack O'Neill. Let's dive in. Jack O'Neill, thank you so much for joining. How are you?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure.
All right. Well, are you dialing in from your house in New York? Is that right?
Yeah, I'm in my studio in New York City, also known as my kids' room. Uh, I kind of co-opted it,
Okay.
but
All right.
yeah, I'm in New York City. We're having a perfect New York City afternoon, and summertime.
Yeah. Yeah. Summertime. So we're right around the 4th of July when we're recording this in 2024, I guess. So there's a lot of things that we're going to get to, hopefully, in the conversation. First off, I just want to say I don't want to come across as too much as a fanboy, but this conversation is one I've wanted to have for literally 30 years.
Wow,
And I say that with all authenticity and like genuineness.
I
Because
appreciate
like
that.
I think everybody that listens to music, right? If they could make a soundtrack of their life, there's certain songs or certain artists that would be part of that. And Jack O'Neill, which is half of Jackopierce, longtime duo band, from way back when, you guys would be side A of my soundtrack. So, or on side A
That's
of my
amazing.
soundtrack. So I just thank you for your time and just thank you for your music.
Well, thank you very much. That was very kind and warm.
Now the
you
gun-
spend a lot of, I spent.
Now the guns
What's
are going
that?
to come out. No, just kidding.
No, no. I mean, I spend a lot of time in this room writing songs, and there are definitely days where you're like, why am I beating my head against this wall? And, somebody really appreciates it, it's good to know. It feels good. So thank you for that.
No, you're welcome.
Thanks
And,
for inviting me on too.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure, and I know I'm not the only one that would want to tell you that. So I think I'm probably saying that on behalf of a lot of people that again are probably late 40s, early mid 50s at this point. So anyway, so I wanted to lead with that, and then we have a lot to get to, including the Jackopierce stuff, but I want to focus on your the solo album that you're working on or have worked on and are slowly releasing. But like this summer, it seems like you and Cary Pierce of Jackopierce, you guys are traveling and touring just as much as ever. I think you did a few shows late spring, and I think have more planned. I guess it feels like the last couple of years you guys have been on the road quite a bit. Do you think that'll continue for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I think this was the busiest spring we've had in a long time. I mean, obviously COVID kind of threw everything out of kilter, but we're both dads. Our kids are getting older, and we don't feel the need to be around as much. So we're definitely taking advantage of getting back out on the road a little bit more. This summer is not crazy, but we're going to Montana in July. We're going to actually play with Toad the Wet Sprocket in Kalispell and Great Falls, and that's going to be awesome. We kind of know those guys. We've known some. We've played with Glenn before. We've played with Toad before. It's been a long time, but Montana's one of the states I've never been to. So there's always a little bit of that where you're like, oh, let's get out and see somewhere we've never seen and play a couple shows, and
Right.
just kind of awesome. So we'll do that, and then I know in August we are going. Man, I think we're going out to like Spokane, Washington for the first time. Really cool venue out there. I'd have to look at the calendar,
Yeah.
but yeah, the point is that we seem to be busier. I mean, this first half of this year, I think, is the busiest first half we've had in a really long time. So,
No, that's great.
yeah, we'll keep it going.
Yeah, no, like we want you to keep it going. I saw you in Atlanta at Eddie's Attic earlier this year. I saw you there a year prior, and then I saw you out at Sweetwater in Mill Valley, California. I think it was a little over a year ago. So I know you guys are crisscrossing the country. It's great to see.
Well, apparently you are too. Sweetwater to Atlanta, that's a long way.
Yeah, it just worked out. It worked out with my work and those things. So awesome. So part of your year obviously is the new solo album. You did some solo work probably, I don't know how long ago, 15, 18 years ago. I think didn't you release some solo songs a while back,
Yeah,
right?
so I did a solo record. It's 20 years,
Oh, is it that long?
honestly.
Yeah.
And I recorded it in New York with Doug Derryberry, who's a great guitarist, instrumentalist, producer, engineer. He's an amazing dude, an old friend, killer resume. And I recorded that in New York, but I recorded that back when, you produced a physical CD.
Yeah.
It was kind of, I think, Napster was kind of a thing, but streaming wasn't on the map yet. And so, back then you'd make a record, create physical copies, sell it on the road.
Right.
We'd sell them at Jackopierce shows. We'd sell Jackopierce CDs, Cary Pierce solo CDs,
Right.
my solo CD. And then, over the years, it kind of just went away. Like I kind of stopped thinking about it. I got pretty involved with my day-to-day life in New York City. And it was really sometime during COVID, I started doing a lot of Stage It from my apartment, which is that, an online platform people can watch you play basically from your living room. And I started playing a lot of those old songs. And I thought I should find out how that record got on all the streaming platforms, because I really don't know.
You don't know. That's amazing.
I had no idea. So I literally went to Spotify and was like, got a message, claim your artist page, for Jack O'Neill. And I'm thinking, well, I mean, it's been up there for, I don't know, 8-10 years, and
Okay.
I haven't even claimed the page. I felt pretty pathetic about it. So I decided to go in the studio and re-record that album. And as I started to move forward on that process, I thought I don't need to do that at all. Could just re-release the songs as is. But I did re-record a couple of them.
Okay.
Which then turned into this batch of solo songs that I've been releasing in 2024.
Okay. The album is yet to really kind of fully be released, but it's called North Star. Is that right?
Yeah, I haven't finished that song, North Star. There's a couple songs unfinished. And, I was just kind of thinking, like, streaming is such a different ballgame from when Cary and I first started. And it's kind of a different approach. So I just thought, I'll just crack singles, throw a song out there with some kind of consistency and see what happens. I mean, I've been writing a lot, and it's just really so much more accessible to release music, through the streaming platforms.
Right.
So I haven't really finished the album. I kind of was like, I'll start releasing these singles and I'll see what happens. So I'm always kind of doing that. Like, let's just see what happens. Now my idea is that when I finish that final song, maybe I'll compile it into an album. But the truth is, I don't think anybody's pining away for an album from me. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like,
Well, I am. No, just kidding. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. So are those so the songs that you're releasing or will continue to release, are any of them, is it a mix of like new songs and like re-recorded versions of the one 20 years ago?
So I re-recorded 2 songs from the album from
Okay.
20 years ago, and the rest of them are all new,
All new. Okay, great.
like written within the last year or two.
Okay, perfect.
So, there's a lot going on there. For years I just really I wasn't writing a lot. I was writing very, very little. And the truth is, I got sober about 5.5, 6 years ago, and kind of the game changed for me personally. And now I'm writing a lot more, and I feel really good about it versus whatever it was before that.
Yeah. No, that's great. You mentioned like streaming's changed everything. I heard the money's really good right now for streaming.
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, if you want to make a lot of money, get into the music business.
Literally, like right before we started this, I was scrolling through, my Instagram feed or whatever, and another artist was like, "Hey, we had a great show last night. I sold $500 of merch, and just a reminder, what does that translate to streams on Spotify, and he did the calculation. It's like 3.5 million streams. It's basically, 12 shirts or however many shirts he sold last night. So he's like, please continue to buy the shirts because the streaming thing it's too much to overcome. It's crazy. It's crazy how the math works. I don't understand it.
The math is terrible in terms of, how much artists get paid per stream. And, it's terrible. I try to look at the positive side of it, which is, as an independent artist, it is a great way to try to find people who might like your music,
Sure.
I don't know how there's 400 million Spotify users.
Yeah.
And I'm like, look, if I can't find 15 of those people that might like this music, maybe I shouldn't be making music. But the numbers for Spotify are terrible. And I think I just saw that the Spotify CEO, was it I don't want to make up stuff. Spotify CEO said something like, cost $0 to create content. It's like, it's a terrible way to look at what we're all doing here. I mean, we're all content creators in your eyes, which is whatever. But I mean, it's, literally blood, sweat, and tears, self-financing everything. I mean, an independent artist now is a CEO, chief marketing officer, social media guru. You wear a million different hats. The idea that it's easy to create a song and put it on the platform might be true from a technical aspect, but all the work that goes into creating, being an artist.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so for the fans of yours, and then obviously Jackopierce, I hate to dumb this down, but is the best way to support you guys obviously going to shows and buying merchandise? Is that the best way to for those of us that are going to watch this, hopefully, that love you all and we want to support you and keep you going? Does it just come down to it's easy as that, or are there other things that we could be doing?
I mean, it is certainly the best way to support bands is if they're out touring to go out and see them live. For sure. I think about young artists that are starting now, and maybe they're doing amazing things on TikTok or Instagram or even streaming, but the challenge is still getting humans in the room,
right?
When they go on the road. So I don't know. It's kind of a heartbreaker because a lot of young artists, I think, they go on the road, which is kind of the dream of most musicians, to be on the road and play live. And they get out there and, it's barely a break even, or even it's a loss.
My perspective as a listener, it's awesome because it's just there. It's accessible. Spotify and others are great to okay, if I like Jack O'Neill, who else can I like? And they'll tee those up. And so I've come across bands and stuff, obviously, I would never have learned about without that. But I just think the math on your side is, I don't know, it doesn't respect, like you said, just the art form, the talent, the time, and all that. So yeah, it's really interesting.
I just try to look at it like, well, where else can you have the potential to reach this many people that you would not reach? But it makes, there are definitely days where you question the whole thing. Yeah. Just like, why am why am I doing this? This is really, really difficult to go it alone. And, the truth is, back in the day, Cary and I made a cassette tape. That was our first, recorded product. And that got passed around by word of mouth. And somebody in Michigan would be like, hey, I got this cassette of you guys. Will you come up to Michigan and play? So, that's kind of how things went viral back in the day.
Yeah.
Was
awesome.
Somebody burning cassette tapes. The streaming thing just kind of satisfies a huge distribution issue. So, like when we first made our first CD in the early 90s, the first reaction from a lot of people is like, you can do that? You know, you can go out, and, you don't have a record label, you can go out and make your own CD? Oh, no shit. You know, there were those kind of gatekeepers. But then after you make a CD, you still need to put it in stores and get people in the stores. And so now that this whole creating a physical copy and getting that distribution is kind of solved by streaming. You know, you can make something on your laptop and load it up and, you know, use whatever distribution service and your song's out there. And then the really hard work begins in terms of, you know, just the ease with which you can get stuff kind of into the world, but it doesn't make it any easier for people to find it. I mean, now there's just
there's so much,
so much. It's really difficult to keep up with everything.
Yeah,
whether it's, you know, streaming television, streaming music, you know, it's hard to keep up. So,
well, to that point, I think it, you know, I sense a little bit this as with my little podcast that I do, but for me, if someone listens to this show like 2 minutes or 30 minutes, and if someone listens to your song for a minute or 3.5 minutes, that's actually a big deal, just given all the options that we have, right? So, you know, it's all perspective. I mean, that's you know, to have someone listen to a song for that, like in the car or like when they're exercising, and then like in their car listening to a show like this, for us to capture their attention for however long, it's like, okay, that's actually a big deal because there's so many options for people to like spend their time on, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's a battle for attention. It's a battle to get, you know, how do you break through all of that? Yeah. And I don't want to say noise, but, you know, how do you break through all that competition? And I've heard very well-known, established musicians talk about how impossible it is to break through. And you're like, well, you got a huge name, and you feel the same,
right?
You know, you feel the same stress.
Yeah.
You know, and I think also part of it is, you know, we're making music, we're putting music in the world, and maybe it has visuals with it, but our, you know, that attention span, you know, our music is competing not with just other music, it's competing with everything. You know, like TikTok runs the gamut in terms of, you know, what kind of I hate to say content, but the content that people are looking at. It's not like everybody's putting out music.
Right.
You know, you're going up against just silly stuff. There's no rhyme or reason. So
yeah. No, it's interesting.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get back to the good stuff, which is the art, right? And the good stuff that you're doing. So far you've released, I think, 4 or 5 singles since February, right? And actually today is the latest one, just ironically here in late June. That one's called Airport Bars and Air Guitars, right?
Yeah.
You've released a song that was your continuation of "Living on a Prayer," I think, from John Bon Jovi. Is that right? Or your interpretation?
Yeah.
Of the
Panic
rest
in
of
the
the story?
cul-de-sac.
Yeah. Panic in the cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
And then the first one was Weight of the World, right? So I think
Weight of the
and then
World.
there's a couple other ones that we can talk about, but I guess could we just hit each of those at a high level, just in terms of
sure,
kind of understanding
your
mind space, the context, and then I've got the lyrics that, you know, I might read a few lines because you know, obviously a lot of it stuck out when I was listening, but also when I actually read the words on the paper. So if we can get into it, that'd be great.
Boy.
I guess let's start with the most recent one, Airport Bars and Air Guitars. So I would love to know the time in your life that inspired this song.
So Airport Bars and Air Guitars was definitely, this is at the very tail end of my drinking career.
Okay.
So I got pretty reliant on alcohol until I quit drinking. And when I quit drinking, it was actually a really huge challenge. It was a really difficult thing to do. But, you know, I got to a point in the mid 2010s where I was just like, I was working a day job in New York City. I was playing music on, a weekend or two a month with Jackopierce. But I would bounce from like this day job world to the road, back to the day job world. And the deeper I got into this day job, the more demanding it became, like
Was that
it was almost like
advertising sales for like a magazine? Is that what I remember?
Yeah. Well, I started in magazines.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's a long convoluted story. I started as a temp back in the day. I was an actor in New York City. Somebody was like, "Hey, you want to come temp?" I was like, "I don't even know what that means, but sure." And I swear it ended up 15 years later. I'm like, "What am I doing?"
Oh my gosh.
So I'd be on the road and drinking way too much. And if there was a robe in the hotel room, I would always put on the robe and crush the minibar. And, it was a very unhealthy existence.
Yeah.
And I just kind of had this thought one time. I was like, what if I called room service and just asked for a pistol?
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, like I'm done with this. It's a pretty dark subject matter,
gosh,
but it's tongue in cheek. It's tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
I don't know. Probably shouldn't share this. It's pretty dark actually, but
No, this is it, right? This is what it's about.
but it was I was that miserable. I was at a point where I was like, man, I can't. I don't know what I can't do anymore. But whatever I'm doing, I can't do anymore. And I don't know if it's trying to be a musician when I don't write anything, or being a guy with a day job who feels like he's totally faking that whole thing. And what it led me to was finally going like, I'm going to quit drinking. And actually, I quit my job and quit drinking. So I resigned from my job and quit drinking, and basically, except for one little moment, have never looked back. And it was during that period where for the first time in my life, and thanks to a good friend of mine who was helping me get sober, that I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm a songwriter. That's really what I am. Not, it took that experience for me to like not have a revelation or anything like that, but to get to a point in my life where I was like, I'm just going to admit I'm an artist and this is what I do. And I can try to pretend like that's not a thing in my life, but the reality is it's totally a thing in my life. And kind of once I gave that up, I gave up drinking, I gave up this idea of having some kind of normal 9-to-5 life, and was like, I'm going to sit down and write songs whether I want to or not. I might as well embrace it and enjoy it. And honestly, now I can't stop writing songs.
Oh, that's great.
So it's a really weird place to be, kind of this late in my life. But, never better late than never, I guess.
Well, it's interesting that you said, hey, I'm an artist, and you led with songwriter rather than actor.
Yeah.
Like that's interesting that
well,
yeah.
Well, it's kind of, I spend more time writing songs than I do acting. And that's because I can totally control writing songs, controlling acting gigs a little tougher. But even the acting thing is something I came back to in that period after I quit drinking. And even that wasn't really a conscious decision, man. It's crazy how the universe speaks to you. It's just kind of one day, it was like a slow-moving realization where I'm like, oh, when I first moved to New York, I was involved with the Flea Theater downtown. I was in the downtown theater scene, and I slowly just pulled myself out of that. I slowly pulled myself out of being a musician to try to satisfy this other idea I had of what I should be doing with my life. And here I am back where I started 20 years ago, almost, like kind of crazy now that I talk about it out loud. I was always much.
Sorry, do you think like today, are you happy, and is this like, are you content? Are you, like what you're doing, is this what you should be doing?
Yeah, I've never felt this level of like comfort with my place in the world, you know what I mean? Like, yes, very happy, very content, kind of like, it takes a lot of stress off in the sense that, I feel like when I was younger, it was like, man, I need to, something big needs to happen so I can be happy, or something big needs to happen so I can have money to be happy, or, shit like that. And now it's like, man, my life is fantastic as it is right now in this moment. Like, I could not ask for more. So why not write a song about airport bars and air guitars? Who's, you know what I mean? Like,
like here's what I think. I mean, my point of view on that, and so like just real quick. Well, do you mind if I read a couple of these lines, just for people that?
Yeah, sure.
So I called room service, requested a revolver, a pause from reception, then laughter. Alone in a hotel robe, I cradled the phone and wondered if I got it wrong. It goes on about shaving cream and razors and the typical things you might call reception for, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like airport bars and air guitars, last call ringing out in power chords, losing my way, losing the war. Don't ask me how I'm getting home. But I think like the fact that you wrote that today when you are, or recently when you're like the happiest moment, I mean, those feelings must still be so real that they're still accessible, right? And I think what's cool about it is there's probably others, whether there's listeners or other artists that might be asking those same questions. How do I get home right now? And the fact that you're kind of on the other side, I think is speaks a lot and probably will give people some inspiration. So I think that's great.
Well, that's such an insightful question. That's a great point, because it's like when the song was realized, I had already kind of made it through that period. When I first came up with the idea of airport bars and air guitars, I was in an airport bar in Nashville, and some guy was playing. You know how they have guys, and I use it anyway.
Yeah.
There were people performing in the corner, and I was like, airport bars and air guitars. And of course, I was getting hammered. But when I was, and I still do, I still write, like, I don't want to call it journaling, I don't know what you call it, but I always found comfort in words, whether it was reading something, listening to something with good words that spoke to me, or writing my own words. I always found it was a comfortable place to be. Like, I could say that kind of stuff. Like, I called reception, requested a revolver, and they laughed at me. And it kind of feels good to put it on paper because it's ridiculous. And not something I think I would ever do, obviously, but when I say, I definitely hit a low point in my life, it was pretty low,
Yeah.
But to be able to record that now and look at it and say, yeah, and that snapshot of that moment is real, like, that's some real shit right there. But, hopefully as a little bit of humor comes through in there. I mean, like, at the end of the day, all I do is, like, I think about just walking out wearing the robe, like, right. Maybe, we get pretty down on ourselves. We can beat up ourselves. I think that's a universal thing, whether you're an artist or not. We can just be our own worst critics, regardless of what we do in life. And I think everybody can relate to, like, just really, like, getting down on yourself and kind of like, let's worst case scenario this,
Right.
Let's worst case scenario this. And now that I release it, that I start to have reservations where I'm like, wow, that is kind of some intense.
Yeah.
Is it intense, or do people, now I have self-doubt channeling through my veins.
Oh, no. Yeah, don't question that.
Because you don't want to, don't want to kind of make fun of serious issues anybody might have, but I can only say that I shared them.
Yeah. No, that's good. Well, I think it reminds me of one of the other people I interviewed a few months ago. He's out of Macon, Georgia. A really great guy. His name's Mike Kinnebrew. And in January, each day in January, he posted just a thought of his journal when he was trying to become sober. So like when he was going through that process, every day he'd write down just a random thought, and it could be sad, it could be anger, it could be something that reminds him of his family or whatever. And his point in that is like, if people were trying to do dry January, even that is a struggle for a lot of people. And so he just wanted to put out like these thoughts to encourage people. And, I think the response to him of that being vulnerable just on social media, like on Instagram, of sharing those things. I mean, I know he's gotten so much positive feedback of like, man, I know what that's like. And it's the roller coaster of the feelings and all those things. So I think like that, to me, that's why art is art and music is music. And we need people like you all to express those experiences in a way that it can relate to, as many people as possible. So, I know what you're saying in terms of the self-doubt, but like it's all good, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, to me, the art I always connect with is something that, obviously says something about like, hey, you're not alone. Like we're all kind of going through this thing, right. Like you're not crazy, man. Like what you're thinking about or what you're feeling, you're not the only person in the world that's feeling that way right now.
Yeah.
And so I've always kind of gravitated that kind of stuff. Even when I was a kid, like the lyrics were important. The Edmund Fitzgerald, I don't know if you remember that song.
No.
I was fascinated by it when I was like 5 or 6 years old.
Oh my gosh.
Because it told the true story about the shipwreck. And I asked my mom, like, is this real? She was like, it's a real thing, man. And she was like, look it up in the encyclopedia.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Yeah.
Which we had, and which it was in there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was like, this is in the encyclopedia. This is some legit shit. But I mean, that universal story, I just thought about the sailors on the ship and their families at the church service. And that was so just profound to me as a 6-year-old. So that kind of stuff kind of sticks with me. So maybe that's the reason, maybe that's the reason. A lot of times you start writing something and you don't know where it's going.
Right.
You don't know why you're writing it. You don't, it's like the secret reveals itself or it doesn't. I don't know. It's like being a detective kind of.
Well, again, as a fan and someone that's listened to you forever, the fact that you came to that realization that you're an artist and a songwriter, and the fact that now that you have sort of accepted the fact that you need to write songs I think it's great news for everybody. But you've been writing amazing songs with amazing lyrics for 30, 35 years. So for all of us, like we're excited to hear that you're going to be doing more of that. So that's great.
Well, thank you, man. Thank you.
It's almost 4th of July, and one of the other recent songs that you've released as part of this process is called Damn Good Son. And this is like, it's like a Born on the 4th of July kind of vibe when I listened to it and when I read it. I'll just read some lyrics, and then if you could give us some context of that and we could talk about that. It's
yeah, sure.
This is kind of in the middle. In good American country, what's left of a hurricane soaks a small southern town. We stand our ground beneath the trees that line the lake. I was a damn good son, and I did what I could to be everything you asked of me. The words I spoke, the oath I took, and just the beating heart of me. You can cover yourself in the night like a glory. It ain't never gonna set you free. So I'm getting that, hey, I'm a damn good son of America, and I gave an oath to serve the country and stuff, but I'm just wondering, like, when did you come up with that, and what was the context of that?
Well, I mean, that's a pretty spot-on analysis. So,
because you come from a military family, right?
Yeah. So I come from my dad was career Army.
Mm-hmm.
The Army, he didn't choose the Army. Let's put it that way. The draft chose him during Vietnam. He's a combat veteran. He's a paratrooper. My mother was pregnant with me when my dad went to Vietnam. So this, you know, so I grew up in that environment. My dad was a career Army guy and just a great dude. He's a great dude. You know, but he's, you know, master parachutist, been in combat, like, so cool. But I grew up bouncing around all these Army posts, and I mean, it was just such a huge part of my life, all of it. So I don't know when it was. It was 6 years ago or something. There was a really rare hurricane that was weak and lame, but it soaked the shit out of Texas on Memorial Day weekend. And I'm up in New York, and I'm like, man, that is going to ruin some barbecues, you know?
Seriously, yeah.
So then, of course, I'm like, well, you know, it's going to ruin barbecues, man, but it's Memorial Day. I mean, we should, you know, also be thinking about the sacrifice, you know?
Right.
So I got all heavy about it. And I thought, all right, what if a bunch of, you know, veterans were like, screw it, we're going down to the lake, I'm drinking beer, and we're gonna toast ourselves, toast our absent friends, that kind of thing. So that's on the surface where it started. And of course, I specifically am thinking of like Fort Hood, Texas, and the lakes around there where I went to high school. You know, so I can be very specific with, you know, like geography and stuff when I'm writing this. But I was working on that song for a long time, and I'm like, man, this is too much. What am I doing? It's too heavy-handed. Like, I it's truthful. I believe this, but I don't know. It's too much for me, you know? So I kept walking away from it. And then I go back. And the Damn Good Son thing, it hit me like about a year ago. That the reason I wrote the song, actually, you know, topically, yes, you're correct. That's what it was topically. But really the story for me, internally, personally, is finding my way back from being a really terrible alcoholic dude. And trying to find my way back to being, you know, kind of the kid I was, you know. And what really drove that home is a couple years into my sobriety, my mother, who passed away in March, said to me, and she always called me Jackie. She said, "Jackie, you remind me of how you were when you were 15 years old. You're just so, I just haven't seen this kid in a long time, you know?"
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, wow. And my parents knew I quit drinking, but they didn't know like the inside boxing of the whole thing. You know, they were just like, "Oh, you quit drinking? That's good. You don't need to do that. Here, have a beer," you know?
Right.
But it kind of hit me about a year ago. I was like, oh, that's actually what the song is really about. And that's why I couldn't let it go. And that's why I made up another story to try to tell the actual story, which is, you know, a pretty classic story, the lost son. But, you know, it's like trying to find your way back after you've gone through something, whether it's by your own design, which in my case mostly was. You know, is finding your way back to being the better or best version of yourself, or maybe the version of yourself you were always supposed to be before you lost your shit. And kind of you know, a universal, you know, I think we can all relate to that. Yeah. Just the story, the details are different. The story's kind of the same, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think, so when I asked you earlier about it, you know, are you content and happy? And you're like, this is the happiest I've ever been. I think she was probably picking up on that, which is great, right? Before she passed, that she could see that. And I was going to say this earlier, but, you know, with all the stuff that you and Cary are doing on social media now, I can tell there's like a lightness. There's just like your persona, and there's like this like fun, let's not take ourselves too seriously, enjoyment, joyfulness kind of persona that I know wasn't there 20 years ago when if I ever saw you in concert or, you know, saw a video or whatever of you. Like, so I think she was probably picking up on what you said earlier about, you know, you're in a great spot, and you sort of come back
Yeah.
to be that 15-year-old. So I think that's beautiful.
I hope so. Yeah, I think so. And I think you're right. There's a kind of a, you get to a point, I'm at a point now where, I'm just kind of like, man, this is what it is. I'm super fortunate across many categories of life. Like, I'm very thankful. I try to every day just kind of be thankful.
Yeah.
For all of it. And then, you talk about the social media piece of it, and I think you kind of got to be like, this is kind of ridiculous. It's kind of a requirement a little bit to do this shit, but it's a little ridiculous. I'm a little ridiculous, but I've always been kind of a ridiculous jackass anyway. So I'm going to lean into it a little bit. Not enough to lean all the way into TikTok, because
Right.
I ain't doing that.
Right.
But whatever, I digress.
No, that's good. All right,
Yeah,
so Damn
like-
Good Son, that came out, I think, a month or so ago. So hopefully everybody can check that out. That's an amazing.
Yeah.
It's an amazing concept on how you sort of positioned it, and then was able to sort of relay the deeper bit of that. So thank you for going there.
Oh, sure.
So we mentioned this one earlier. This was interesting title, Panic in the Cul-de-Sac. So this is about Tommy and Gina, back to Living on a Prayer, I think, by John Bon Jovi. So where in the world did this idea? I know where the idea came from. I'd assume the song that he recorded and released. But at what point in your life did you say, okay, I'm gonna make my own sequel here?
Pretty late in the game. So when I first wrote it, the first line, I was just messing around on the guitar, and you just kind of make up words, and you're hanging out, and just trying to make noise. I just like making noise on the guitar, like it's slightly embarrassing. But I this line popped out. Tommy had a heart attack on the 5th of June. And the way I sang it, just everything about it intrigued me. I was like, that was, that's interesting. So I did not start with okay, Tommy and Gina. But as I started just kind of messing around with a theme of it, about this guy who's he's folding the flags in his dad's garage, which, he's cleaning out the parents' garage after, somebody's passed away. And then I was like, well, I should introduce another character. How about Gina? Holy shit, Tommy and Gina.
Oh, she's... No, that's good.
And then, after I recorded it, I was playing one of a very rare live show in New York, and I was like, man, I should, I've acknowledged that Tommy and Gina kind of inspired this, kind of what happened to them? Did they move to the suburbs? Did they get married? Because at the time of the original song, he was working on the docks, but the union was on strike.
Yeah, he was on the dock.
And she was working the diner all day to take care of her man. So already there's some tension, you know what I mean? So before I played this live show, I was like, man, you know what? I don't know how to play Living on a Prayer by Bon Jovi. I should whip it up a little bit. And man, it is so similar.
Yeah.
The chords and everything. Anyway, it's just weird how music works. I think it's kind of the inspiration you take as a writer, or the inspiration you take as a human is everything that you bring in. You're the original algorithm. So every song I ever heard, every movie I've ever seen, conversations I've had, all kind of go through the algorithm.
Right.
And pieces of it pop up and find their way into your conscious as you're creating stuff. And I can't say, I was not a big Bon Jovi fan. I was very familiar with their body of work as a kid. And then I was like, man, these guys are badass. These songs are great. So it really started with I mean, what am I saying? It started. But anyway, Tommy and Gina kind of got mixed up in this idea of having a panic attack versus having a heart attack. and how like in a neighborhood people are, kind of pretty aware of other people's business. And
Well, especially in a cul-de-sac, right?
I heard somebody in the cul-de-sac, I just wanted to use the word cul-de-sac.
Yeah,
I do that a
cool.
lot too. I just like, see if I can fit that in there. But yeah, it is a question of like, that was such a hopeful song and a little bit of a heartbreaker back then. It's like, what could have happened?
Yeah.
And sorry if it got a little disappointing. I don't know.
Well,
I think it's pretty open-ended what happens in the end in this one. There's no narrative. How about that? Like
Right.
The story kind of begins and then leaves you with the rumor mill, I guess. I don't know.
As it should in a cul-de-sac, right? Rumors start and they go crazy. So that's good. All right. Well, the first single was "Weight of the World," and I will say like that's probably the poppiest something.
Yeah, it's pretty-
poppiest thing that I think that you've ever sort of produced and released. It's very very catchy.
poppy.
Your videos walking the streets of New York, it's kind of singing it. Back to your point earlier about not taking things too seriously, like I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall while you were like recording that. But anyway, the tune is great. The
man.
melody's great. I guess so if I understand some of the notes that I've seen around when that was released, it's about a relationship, kind of the bookends of a relationship and all the things in between. But what exactly is the weight of the world that you're referring to? Is it the burden of a relationship, or is it the burden of life? That's what.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
ask you
it's
about
kind
that.
of it's kind of like the weight of the world is like, try and fail, like, give it a shot, like go for it, like it's not, move on, you know what I mean? Like it didn't work, haul ass, kind of like that. That song actually started. I was writing scenes for a short film that we started filming a little bit, me and a couple of actor friends, and I got into that process and was like, wow, I'm kind of out of my league here. This is a big commitment if we're going to do this correctly, and it's going to need it's going to need a lot more time and energy than I think I'm willing to do right now. So I was like, well, I got a few of these scenes. I'm just going to, I'm going to turn it into a song. So really the idea of the song was two people meet, for me, a very specific place, the B62 bus stop over here on Jackson Avenue.
Okay.
And then they meet there by accident. And then the next scene, they're breaking up on 7th Avenue South, which is also another very specific spot. And, kind of the idea is like, you remember the first big moment of kind of anything. And maybe you remember that last dramatic moment. And then everything in the middle is just kind of like a wash. And I represented it with, there was a killer bar I used to always go to, and my now wife and I used to go there all the time.
Okay.
Patrick Conway's, right over by Grand Central.
Okay.
And we went there like when we first started dating. Nobody broke up there.
Okay,
I spun that. But Patrick Conway's, one day they were like, oh, we're closing Patrick Conway's, and they tore down the entire city block and put up a huge building. So now it's like a, whatever. But for my wife and I, we're like, man, that was kind of like, that was our place. Like
That was your spot.
That's where we first fell in love. And it's like, you have these first moments that are memorable, the last moments that are memorable, and the stuff in between will literally get torn down and replaced by a bank. You know what I mean?
Oh, wow.
So that's the whole meet me up at Conway's for, which honestly I put in the song just for my wife because I was like, hey,
Good move. That's
this
a
one's
good
for you,
nod.
kid.
Yeah.
But I think the weight of the world, it's basically like, it's not the weight of the world, man. Like, go out and try falling in love. Don't be afraid to
Right.
fall in love with anything.
Right.
Don't be afraid to go out and, swing for the fences and miss, regardless of what it is. I mean, the world will not end. Like, shit will keep on going. They will tear it down and replace it with something else. Yeah,
No,
which
that's
isn't
great.
a bad thing.
Yeah, that's great. I think so. Based on what that, just a quick comment. So I was married a long time, like 25 years. That ended a few years ago. I moved to the South from Colorado, and you start to like on your TikTok. You mentioned TikTok, like not that I'm a TikTok guy, but like whether it's TikTok or Instagram, your feeds sort of start to like take on a life of their own based on interests or whatever. And so all of a sudden I started getting all these like relationship feeds, and then you start talking to other middle-aged people that are single, that are divorced, whatever, and they all have the story. And a lot of people are afraid to open themselves up because of the experiences of a prior relationship. Like they're afraid to open their heart up, right? Because I think they're afraid to get hurt. And they're afraid of heartache and heartbreak and just all that, and I get that. But I think what I love about what you just said is like the experience is worth it, right? And at the end of the day, life does go on. You're going to get through it. They're going to get through it. You're going to learn from it or whatever. And I love that perspective, because I think the outlook that I had was like, listen, I just want experiences. I want to meet cool people. I never really did that because I fell in love with my wife at the time, like early, like we were young. So I never really had that opportunity. But at this stage, I get it. Like people have baggage, they've been hurt, but a lot of people are just so closed. And I wish that I wish more people had that perspective of what you just said about the song, because at the end of the day, it's not the weight of the world.
It's not. I mean, it definitely can feel like it, and, but that's a great point you just made. And maybe that's, there's something even deeper in the song for me that I haven't even uncovered yet.
Yeah.
Which is something you might uncover. I think that's also the amazing thing about songs is the way they can be interpreted or processed or speak to different pieces of what it means, versus what the songwriter intended, or maybe the songwriter didn't intend anything.
Right. I do have some Jackopierce questions, if you don't mind, and then we could probably wrap up. But I think, but yeah. So the album that is likely to be named North Star, based on the finishing of the North Star song, which is at some point. When can we expect that? Do you think is that?
So so now I'm playing games with calendars. So I'm like, what if so my goal this year was to release a song every month.
Right.
And I already messed up by missing January. So I'm like, all right, every month, but schedule, starting with February. Oh wait, I wanted to add one thing. You mentioned, I just remember this. You mentioned the video I did where I was singing.
Yeah.
That song, "Weight of the World."
Mm-hmm.
So I posted that on my YouTube, which I have a YouTube channel. And I got one comment. And the comment was, "What is this? And why is it on the internet?"
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, come on, man. I actually, I kind of thought, man, the balls on this person.
Yeah. Seriously.
I mean, it's literally what the internet is there for. I'm not going to explain it, but anyway, I kind of, it gave us all a good chuckle. Me and my brother was there with me, my wife, my sister-in-law. I was like, look at this comment. They were like, that's hilarious. You should tell him. I was like, I'm not going to tell him shit. Good comment. I'm just going to leave it there.
Yeah, just let it ride.
Anyway, so one comment, you could let it get under your skin, or you could laugh about it because it's kind of funny and something I might say to be a smartass, but I'm not that much of a smartass.
Right, and then eventually there might be an album.
Yeah, so I was going to release a song every month. I have 9 songs for North Star.
Okay.
And I feel like when you get to November, December with the world of streaming, if it's not a holiday song,
Right.
like it's kind of, I'm like, do I go record a holiday song? Well,
Yes, you should actually. That'd be amazing.
how about it's Christmas in the cul-de-sac? That could be actually, that's a pretty good idea. We could probably run with that. Anyway, so then I was thinking, man, all right, this is a totally long answer. I was thinking maybe I drop the final song in January 25. That way I get a 2025 on the album.
Okay. Yeah.
Just to try to extend the life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's really like there's an expectation now with streaming, etc., is that artists you kind of need to continually put stuff out.
Right.
Gone are the days of like, here's a record, 2 years later, here's a record. The business model doesn't really support that for, I think, most artists, or maybe any artist. I don't know. I don't feel like I have a whole lot of leverage where I'm at, especially with releasing solo stuff, that like I can play hardball with any of this stuff. So I'm just trying to kind of have fun with it and see if I can, I don't know, make it work somehow. But so yeah, maybe it's January.
Okay.
Because at this point, like I don't think I want to release it in November because, but then again, there's like zero rules.
Yeah.
At all. There are like no rules.
So. Oh, that's good. Well, I guess.
But how about this? I got to finish 2 songs. So.
All right.
And that hasn't happened yet. So.
All right. Well,
anyway.
So we talked about your long career as a musician. You've talked about acting, your day job. You've seen a lot. You've lived in a lot of places. I guess at this point in your career, what are you most curious about, like today?
That's a great question. Wow.
So the premise of the podcast I started is it's called Curious Goldfish, and the idea is it's based on Ted Lasso. So there's 2 scenes, right, that kind of come together. There's Be a Goldfish, which is all meant about, hey, have a short memory, forget your mistake, move on. So that's the goldfish bit. That was from like the 1st or 2nd episode, I think. I don't know. Did you watch Ted Lasso?
Yep. Yeah, totally. Loved it. Loved it.
Yeah. So it sort of changed my life, and so that's the goldfish bit, and then the curious bit is be curious, not judgmental. And I actually think if you look at relationships, if you look at work, whether it's a temp job in New York City or whether you're a janitor or whether you're a banker, I don't think people are curious enough, right? And so the idea for me with this podcast is to use my curiosity about people like you and music to sort of demonstrate my curiosity. And then I'm always curious what people are curious about, because everybody's got something that they're chewing on or something that they want to uncover. And for you that has lived such a unique life, with music and acting and the military upbringing, I'm just, again, curious, like, what are you curious about in your mid-50s?
Yeah, great question. And I would say that I'm really curious about what finish lines. Like the idea that it's never over till it's over, like.
Yeah.
So there are some cliches that I grew up with. I'm sure a lot of people did. There are no second acts in American life. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Shit like that. Which now that I am, 50 plus, I'm like, well, let's re-examine those.
Let's test that, yeah.
Because it's. I'm curious about, what really is like the finish line on anything, like a career, a relationship. Can you have multiple iterations of what your life's work is, what your career is, like, can it be a continually evolving process? And by process, I mean not only the day-to-day work you do, but also the way your mind processes information. Like, just because I grew up thinking things should be a certain way doesn't mean that they got to be set in stone. Like, can I not open my mind and change the way I, look at a situation? Can I not look at it from 180 degrees and see a totally different solution, outcome, source of the problem, whatever it might be? What I seem to realize more often is how many people don't listen to each other.
Yeah, seriously.
I mean,
they don't listen. People don't listen.
They like, watching people have a conversation, you're like, you guys are both talking at the exact same time, is driving me nuts. And neither one of you is listening to what the other one's saying. It's like this competition to get the words out. Just stop and listen for a minute. But I think I'm really curious about, can we continue to explore and evolve and have fulfilling life, like and it's a very self-serving thing, right? I mean, I'm in my 50s now.
Right.
I'm an artist. Obviously, what I'd like the answer to be like, yes, actually, most people have their best career, 60, 70 range, you know what I mean, or whatever.
Right.
So it's a self-serving premise, but I just feel like there's always room to kind of improve on yourself, on your craft, on the way you handle relationships, give more grace, be more open. And that includes a lot of things. Like, I've been going to see more live music in the past couple of years than I'd gone to in 15 years.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, stop saying no to shit, see what's out there, and challenge yourself. Like, go see something that you probably don't think you want to go see. And
yeah. No, that's good. And I think, well,
yourself and you're like, wow, this is great.
yeah. Well, I think the challenges that you talked about earlier.
I don't know if that answered.
Yeah. No, the challenges that you were talking about earlier around, alcoholism and that whole thing. I feel like since you've come to the other side of that, you're in a great position today to actually do bigger things than you may have been able to do, even in your 30s, right? Your mind's clear, your heart's clear, like I said, people are seeing differences, right? And so I think you're in a great spot to do whatever you can. So I think like the sky's the limit there for you, Just
I appreciate that.
Yeah, just given the journey you've been on,
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate it. I think you're right. I mean, the way I looked at life 20 years ago is very different from how I look at it now. Mm-hmm. And it's, I guess 20 years ago was more, I don't know, antagonistic, a little more
right.
Us versus them, or me versus the world. I don't know what it was. But now it's much more like, well, what did I expect? I don't know. I feel like I was a very self-centered. I still am, I'm sure. But I think it was more so 20 years ago that I was more like, I'm really coming at this with me right at the center of the universe. Yeah. And I need to see how the world reacts to my wants and needs, versus now, just like, wow, there's a lot going on out there, man. Not a lot of people are really spending a lot of time worrying about what I need, how I feel.
Right.
It's kind of freeing, but.
No, that's good. All right. Well, thanks. Yeah, that's a good answer. Yeah. All right. So if you don't mind, I do have some Jackopierce questions, and then we can wrap up.
Of course, man.
So back to Ted Lasso, right? If you watch the show, I just started a YouTube channel myself just to see, get the good content that I'm getting, not really from me, but from the guests that I have, and their amazing songs and their amazing perspectives on life. And so I'm putting that out on my YouTube channel.
Is it Curious Goldfish YouTube?
Yeah, Curious Goldfish podcast on YouTube. So part of that is you can post
I'm
polls
all
and
over.
ask questions and things. Well, I did a poll. This is like in the last week. What's your favorite relationship from the Ted Lasso show? Is it Roy and Keeley? Is it Ted and Rebecca? Is it all these things? And is it Ted and
Oh,
Coach
who
Beard?
won?
And of all those options, Ted and Coach Beard, everybody loved that one. The people that voted like
Okay.
that won the day. And looking back at Jackopierce, you and Cary met, I think, at SMU in the late 80s and have had this incredible run. I think there was a little bit of a pause at some point, but, if you watch the show, you saw the dynamic with Ted and Coach. That was Coach Beard. It was like this working relationship, and all that. But then they had this personal relationship where they would, hold each other accountable and do those things. Like, is that how off from that is the relationship that you and Cary have? Because I think a lot of us that have listened to you all, is the stage, is that a good representation of it? Is it something else? And like, what's it meant to you to be with somebody like for so long? I just thought that might be a good parallel to at least try to draw from. I don't know.
That's awesome. So I will say, Cary and I met, we were 18, probably like the first day of school. We were both theater majors. And when we came into the theater program, maybe the first day, all the freshmen had to do like a monologue, whatever, to introduce you to the entire theater. So all the undergrads and the master's students, everybody's in the big room and they watch your work.
That's a lot, yeah.
And then the first day of actual class, our acting teacher comes in. And it's a small class. There's probably like 15 of us in this whole freshman class. And he critiques us all. And he starts with Cary. And he's like, man, I'll buy you a plane ticket right now to get out of here. That was the worst thing I've ever seen. And then he goes, there's only one other student in this class who sucks as bad as you. And I swear, man, this is like from a movie. Cary had a notebook, and I barely knew him. I didn't know him for shit, And I wrote on his notebook like, oh man, that's gonna be me, and it was. He was like, I'll buy you a bus ticket, because he knew I lived in Killeen, 3 hours down the road. I'll buy you a bus ticket. You were doing nothing but wasting time and space in here. We were like, well, shit, man. Welcome to college. Anyway, as I got older in life, I learned that the professor's technique was very similar to maybe going to basic training, which is, I'm gonna kick you out of your comfort zone and see what you do with it. Anyway, but that said, so we became buddies. Beginning of, we were 18, and I think we were playing in his dorm room within a couple weeks, and we've been playing together ever since.
Were you each musicians and writing songs like independently, and then it was like, oh, you play, I play, like let's play together, or did you kind of learn together?
No. Oh my God, the family joke in my house was I had a guitar, and I had guitar lessons a little bit in high school, but my dad would be like, he'd like, play me something on the guitar, and I'd play him like something, and he'd be like, when are you going to be able to play a whole song? Yeah, that was the joke. Like, I couldn't play a whole song. So when I met Cary, I couldn't play a whole song. And he was on a keyboard. So, we were really exploring our options. But, our sophomore year, man, we started playing covers every Tuesday night at this place called Mimi's. And I was like, this is fantastic. I'm going to make like a couple bucks. I'm going to drink for free. And every Tuesday night turned into every Tuesday night, and then every Wednesday night at the Rhythm Room. So, I mean, really, for a year or two, our woodshed was playing live, and we would have to kill like 4 hours a time, like it was.
Wow.
So, anyway, this is a very convoluted way to say that, like, our relationship is probably one of the most consistent adult relationships in either of our lives. Like we've been together. I love the kid. we go on the road, and I think the reason we go on the road so much is we have a blast. I mean, we have very similar sense of humor. Like, I get a laugh out of him pretty easy, and likewise.
Oh, that's
Which
great.
I got an odd sense of humor. I'm sure. There was a period where there was a 5-year period where we did break up, kind of almost at like the height of where Jackopierce was.
Right.
And if you look back at it, I think at the time there's just too much came at us way too fast at too young an age.
Yeah.
Record labels, publishing deals,
Yeah.
a lot of people getting into the mix. On the road, like, I don't know, man, 200 nights a year. I mean, like we were, but we came back to it and, kind of took it nice and easy. But no, man, we still go on the road, and man, we have a lot of fun. I mean,
No,
so
that's
what
good.
you see on stage is just a continuation
Oh,
of
good.
the stupidity backstage. I mean, I say stupidity, but I mean, yeah, we just have fun. We go to,
Yeah.
we
No,
go to
that's great.
go to Whole Foods a lot. But yeah, I mean, he's, like, I guess I'm trying to remember how Beard and Coach, how far back they go, but yeah, very similar thing. Like, he knows my worst
Yeah.
instincts, and he celebrates my best instincts. In the period where I was not writing a lot and getting really down on it, he was like, man, you got to keep going, man. You write great stuff, like just always super supportive.
No, that's great.
And I feel the same way, like in terms of just run with, you got an idea, run with it, just run. Sky's the limit. So
No, that's great. Yeah, because in the
so
the
yeah,
show,
I don't see it.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
No, go ahead.
in the show, you could see where, like, when Ted was struggling with, like, his panic attacks, or, like, there was moments, like, you could see, again, I know it's television, but Coach Beard would, like, he'd say the right thing, he'd guide him in the right way, because he was, to your point, he kind of knew his worst behavior or
Yeah.
tendencies, and now that was when I'm like, I wonder, like, after all these years, or maybe even all through the years, if Cary and Jack kind of had that similar dynamic.
Yeah, I think, and I think it's, I think it's certainly as we both gotten older, like it's gotten better. It's
Yeah.
I mean, that's my personal opinion.
It probably got better after you were sober too, right?
Well, there's a part of it for sure where I'm like, man, I cannot believe like I didn't get fired.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I don't know if I don't know how much rope I would have given or space I would have given if the roles were reversed. Like because I really pushed some limits,
Yeah.
and but it's a testament to the friendship that
No, it's
kind of
great.
knew that wasn't the real me or whatever, and so some good friendship, some faith, and yeah, I mean, I feel like, and this is just my opinion, but I feel like we're having about as much fun as we've ever had right
Yeah.
now. So
It looks like it. Yeah, it looks like it for sure. Well, this might actually tie back to the sobriety and pre-sobriety, but I've always wondered about the Mexican tune bit.
Yeah.
Kind of
Yeah.
like how that started, and for those of you people that might watch this are
man.
probably huge Jackopierce fans, but yeah, it's a kind of an improvisation on stage to a consistent sort of strumming melody, whatever you want to call it, right? And you call it Mexican tune, but I don't think you do that anymore. Was that something that you just did because you were like so hammered that like oh, let's do this, like, and I know you love tequila a lot and all that, but I always wonder, like, how did it start? And when you actually did that, did you have an idea of the storyline that you were gonna take the audience through, or was it all kind of impromptu? Because my favorite one of all was, because I grew up in Missouri, there was the version that's on the Live in the Americas, that you released with the blue blue jacket. You have a line in there that says, "There's one time I wore combat boots in Missouri." I was
yes.
Like,
So
what
that
the hell?
was,
What is that about?
oh my God.
But anyway, yeah. So the
Yeah,
Mexican tune thing, like, can you just
man.
give me the synopsis on that? I've always been curious about that.
So it started like a lot of our songs, which was when we found ourselves playing those epic 4 and 5 hour gigs and would start running out of material. And, depending on the club or the situation, the indifference of the crowd, if you will.
Right.
A lot of times we wrote a lot of songs just on the spot that became songs. Like the three of us in a boat was something that just kind of happened on the spot. Just you're kind of like, well, we're here. We're required to play for another 30 minutes, so let's just make something up. So Cary started with that guitar thing. It was a very simple guitar thing, and we'd gone on a trip down to Mexico, and definitely there was tequila and everything involved, but I did this thing, which I'd been doing since high school. It was just kind of like stream of conscious, just kind of start making a story up and just, kind of just letting it go. So we started trying to do that with some music at the end of the night when everybody was hammered and maybe we were a little tipsy and we were killing time, and it just became its own thing. But the point of pride with it was that it was different every time.
Yeah, right.
Which became a problem for me because then it had to be different every time.
Well, and the crazy thing is, it's not a minute long, right? Like, it's not like,
it's like
this guy and then this guy and then whatever, then we're done. The one I was listening to like this week, I was like, how long? It's 12 minutes. That was one of the versions that I had.
You gotta be kidding me. I mean, yeah, come on. I mean, I'm not listening to that anyway. But yeah, that was the secret was, it just kind of had to be made up on the spot. I do remember one time we were in Michigan, and I had just finished. A lot of times I would take books I was reading and riff on the books. Like, I'm not saying, some of the story ideas were original. I mean, like, I would just riff on life. I riffed on Nolan Ryan getting in a fight with Robin Ventura.
Oh, perfect.
I still remember that one. That was a class. I mean, like, that one came together like, plenty of them were terrible. But like the one from that Live from Americas I'd been reading, I can't remember the name of the book, but it was about Crazy Horse and Custer and the Battle of Little Bighorn.
Yeah, they kicked Custer. They kicked Custer's ass sideways, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, come on, man, whatever. Like history nerd stuff. And then, we obviously stopped doing it, and people still ask for it a lot, but yeah, it takes a level of confidence and chutzpah, if you will, that I really don't. I mean, I can't even listen to the recorded versions because they make me cringe a little bit. Although I did listen to that one recently because I was like, all right, maybe what if we do it live? Somebody was like, hey man, when you do it live now, I think people expect the recorded version. So you're confused because we've done it a couple times recently.
Oh, you have? Okay, yeah.
Didn't go over so great. I didn't think it went over so great. Yeah. And somebody was like, dude, you got to do the record. They don't know. Nobody knows what this is. Then I was like, maybe it just needs to live in the past. And
yeah. Well, because you guys are doing these request shows, right? And thank you, by the way. I think it was the Sweetwater one. I requested "Capable Girl," and you guys played it, so thank you for that. But
oh yeah,
I wanted to request Mexican tune. But I didn't think you did it because I thought that was like just a bit from your past where alcohol sort of was the thing. And
definitely, alcohol would help.
Yeah.
Alcohol definitely helps you loosen up. I'm way too, I would say self-conscious, but more like a little too straight-laced now.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
No. It's all good. Well, thanks for that. I've wanted to ask you that forever. So thank you for that. Then one last question, I guess.
Yeah, no problem. Man.
In all the Jackopierce sort of catalog, what's the song or the album that you think like Jack O'Neill is like, okay, that I want that to be not my legacy because you've got 30 more years in you, 25 more years in you, whatever that is, but is the best representation of like you, Cary, and what Jackopierce sort of means, to you guys? Like what would come to mind that, if people listen to it or they see you perform and they're like, okay, like that's important to Jack?
That's a great question. I would say that's a great question. I think, man, I would be between two. I think it would be the first one, maybe with I'd have to look up the title. That one and the one we did with T-Bone Burnett, because it was T-Bone Burnett.
Oh, T-Bone, yeah.
And the players on that record, Ben Montench.
Was that Bringing on the Weather, or was that?
Yeah, Bringing on the Weather.
Yeah.
Danny Fongheiser on the drums, Jerry Sheff on bass. Scarlett Rivera played fiddle on that. She played on Bob Dylan records. I mean, just a real... And it was T-Bone Burnett, who
Right.
That was just such a great experience. And the juxtaposition between that album-making experience, our first one in L.A. with T-Bone Burnett, and then the second record we made, where we made it, and then we turned it in, and the label was like, meh. And it became like that whole label experience. Like, well, you need to re-record a lot of this, and we're going to bring in somebody else.
Was that
we're going to
Finest
bring in
Hour?
this other guy.
Was that Finest Hour?
Yeah,
yeah. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Finest Hour, which was it just wasn't as pure of an experience. I mean, the T-Bone experience just felt like like it was like the perfect like record making experience, like killer spot, great players, just but anyway, Bring It On the Weather, and what's the white one? I guess the white one, maybe.
I think it's just, isn't it
But like
untitled?
that super pure.
It's just just
just the
JP on the
pure-
cover. I don't think there's a title to the whole album. Is there?
Yeah, and I think it's pretty much pure acoustic. It's just me and Cary.
All right, cool. Well, again, Jack, I've taken way too much of your time, but like I said, it's an
my
honor.
pleasure.
And I really appreciate the candor, and congrats on all the activity and everything. And if I can get a little bit more greedy, if you wouldn't mind playing a song or two, it would just mean everything. So can we do that?
Oh, that's weird. I happen to have a guitar right here.
Oh, perfect.
Boxed in by rain. Yeah, we're drinking cold beer down the lake coast anyway. Good American country, what's left of a hurricane, falls on a small southern town. We stand our ground. Never gonna set you free. From good American country, the kid I was when it was a name. I come on dirty and proud, brilliant and scrawny.
Thank you so much, Jack. That was amazing.
Quick step to Texas in a driving wind. It seemed the man on the moon was crying too, as he left the Kansas wheat fields and made for Dallas, all in a dream. He'd been born 20 odd years ago today, but he didn't believe he'd yet been alive. So he kept the night in Dallas, and when he woke, he made a push for Santa Fe. Hey, hey, hey. He might explain that I'm biding my time. I'll hitch my wagon up to another star. I'm taking my own sweet time. Who knows where I'll be a day from now. Texas one time had been a young man's dream. Rich oil ran in no ebony streams, but the dreams cashed in and made men go. Then the rivers have done run dry. West of Amarillo, he had a vision of an Indian girl and a cabin in the snow. Perhaps Santa Fe will be kinder than Kansas ever was. But your dreams come clean over miles of road. I come to think of it, the Tucson don't seem too much further to go. Cause I'm biding my time. I'll hitch my wagon up to another star. And I'm taking my own sweet time. Who knows where I'll be a day from now. Oh, you know
I really appreciate it. Thanks for the time for the conversation.
My pleasure.
Yeah,
thank you, man.
Just an honor, man. And good luck the rest of the year with everything, and hope to see you in Atlanta soon.
It's a deal, man. Thanks for everything.
All right. Cheers.
All right. Cheers.